out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Back here with Drew, Thomas. We're going to talk about the Austrian Grand Prix. And on our last episode, we were talking about how we needed a little spice in the race and in the series. And I think we finally got that with about a quarter of the race left. We definitely got a little bit of spice going on. So much to talk about. Drew, do you want to kick us off some key takeaways from this Austrian Grand Prix?
Yeah, this is exactly what the F1 world needed. Everyone is super pumped about everything that happened. Obviously, no one wants Lando to be out of the points, but you know that lap 63 collision between Max and Lando is obviously going to give everybody something to talk about. I think it's the first time in a long time that Max has had to go wheel to wheel with somebody. And unfortunately, it's his good buddy, or was his good buddy, at least, Lando Norris. And, I was reflecting back and I was thinking that I think this is the first time that Lando Norris has had an opportunity to see Max Verstappen in this light. And, there's a lot of previous race winners and champions, through Max Verstappen's come up that has seen him race like this. And I think this is a eye-opening experience for Lando in terms of him seeing Max in a different light. I'm very much here for it. This is absolutely an awesome thing to have happen, because now what we've seen is there's a competitive car that Max needs to be worried about on a week in and week out basis. And that hasn't happened for a very long time. And I think it's fantastic. I think that, all the Netflix people and Drive to Survive people are going to be way too pumped about this. And I'm here for the rest of the season. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome.
This was one of the races I am really, really glad I watched it live and not on a replay. It was very, very entertaining, especially like the last 10, 15, 20 laps. Holy, I'm glad no one got hurt in that incident, but we needed that. I think the sport needed that, and us fans needed that. We needed that entertainment, and that's exactly what happened. And did we get that entertainment? Because Lando and Max, out of all people, and that was a close fight, and essentially, Lando DNF'd and Max finished still fifth. But as you said, Drew, it's Lando got that first-hand experience, how Max can be so competitive. It's going to be very interesting to see the dynamic between these two, how it's going to change, if it's going to be changed going forward. So hopefully more close fights like this to come in future races.
So I have to say, I think for the most part that this race weekend was a bit of a bore. I don't know if it was just me, but I felt like, the sprint was kind of meh, the qualifyings were meh, and the race itself was okay until you had, 8 laps left, and then all of a sudden fireworks and like everything changes, right? So I think it was good for the weekend. Obviously, it's good for the sport because now we maybe have that emerging real rivalry that we talked about last week. Let's go a little bit more in depth into the incident itself. We're going to move on to kind of George and talk about the race win and all that stuff in a little bit. But obviously, Max got the penalty. Didn't really affect his final position, right? Because he was still on the points. Lando was out. Looking at the footage and the video and from what we've seen, is this something that Max should have been penalized for?
Well, I think that Lando Norris, the first 2 times that he tried, was trying to go up the inside, and he figured Max wasn't going to let this happen. So he wanted to take the dive bomb down the outside and see how that works. And I think it's a twofold thing, because ultimately there's one of 2 scenarios that was going to happen. Either Lando was not going to try to pass Max in a, valiant style like he did, or he was going to, and something like this was going to happen because Max is either first or he doesn't care. You finish first or you don't, or you crash your car trying to finish first, right? And so that's kind of his mentality. So, Lando was either going to be that guy who crashed into Max or died trying. And, ultimately, unfortunately it wrecked his race entirely and Max was able to salvage it. But, this is that kind of selfish driving that Max has, and he doesn't really care and hasn't. We just haven't seen this out of him because we haven't had any sort of competitive racing where he's been 12 to 25 to 30 seconds ahead of everybody else. This is just the first opportunity that we've seen Max have to go wheel to wheel with somebody in quite some time. Do I think Max deserved that penalty? Yeah. do I think that this penalty or this single scenario is going to stop Max from driving the way Max drives? No. He's got away with it for the last, 8 years he's been driving? Every time he does something like this, and he gets penalized less often than he does. So to him, this is just how things go, and he would rather just roll the dice on taking penalties or small, incidents that the 1 in 5 or the 1 in 10 that he actually gets knocked out and his car can't get back. He DNFs. But ultimately, like, it's worked for him so far. So why would he change that? And, they've had to alter the rules. They call them the Max Verstappen rules, in order to prevent this, but it's not happening anyway. It's not going to change a thing that he does. And I think going forward that, like, unless you give Max a penalty that, gets him out of the race or disqualifies him from the race or the points, I don't think anything's going to change. He's going to keep doing this until something changes, and ultimately he's going to keep getting away with it because he's one of the greats. And it's just like Wayne Gretzky never got penalties called on him because he's Wayne Gretzky. It's one of those scenarios. And I just think that something needs to be done about his driving in terms of his aggressiveness and not letting racing scenarios play out that maybe don't end in his favor. I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, you pretty much hit the spot on. Both of them, as you, Drew, said, both of them were a little bit cheeky. Lando was dive-bombing, Max is being Max with his aggressive driving. But at the end of the day, what the FIA did, giving him the penalty and, essentially he's found at fault. Yeah, that was 100% the right choice by the FIA. I think 10-second penalty and I think it was like 2 points on his supercar license or something. I think that was way too much of a soft penalty to the point where it didn't really matter anything. It didn't change anything. So I don't know what needs to be done. It should have been, I think, maybe a 15-second penalty. But then again, we're entering kind of uncharted territory there. And, some other drivers might argue it'd be too harsh if that was to happen to them. His driving is aggressive. He has that winner's mentality. He's there to win. Don't think much is going to change from his side unless something on the outside factors change. So yeah, I think he's gonna same as what Drew said. He's gonna continue driving like he does, and he's gonna take a chance. And if he gets a penalty, he's gonna walk with it. But a lot of the times, it's just FIA and they just look the other way and essentially let him be.
So I'm not one to generally defend Max. However, in this particular instance, I don't know if it was a fully warranted penalty. And I'll kind of explain to you, my thoughts. And there are a couple of reasons for that. So the first one is, let's look at like Lando leading up to this incident. We talked about this with George Russell back in Canada, talking about, a driver who is now finding himself in a position more and more where he's in a competitive car, where he's competing for podiums and now wins. And I don't have the sense that Lando knows yet how to close out victories and win races the same way that, a Max, Lewis, Leclerc, whoever maybe has. Leclerc's a bad example. Get him out of here because he even has his own issues, right? But, like the really strong winners, no. I feel like a lot of those moves, when they were kind of closing the laps, leading up to that, they looked a little bit desperate, just kind of like sending it down on the inside and like hoping for the best, right? And there were a couple of them where, he locked up, he went off track, he kind of just threw it in there, Max went off track. Did he gain an advantage on that second round? Maybe. But looking at the actual incident itself, there was talk about whether he was braking or he was moving under the braking zone or whatever it might be. But, he was definitely squeezing Lando to the outside. But does that warrant that kind of penalty? And if it wasn't Max, would that penalty be still handed out? I'm not sure, right? But to me, it almost seemed it seemed like there was some finesse missing on Lando's side, right? Because he's new to be in these positions, and I think he's still trying to like figure it out. And a lot of his driving seemed impatient. What do I know? But that's just kind of what I got from it. And if the roles were reversed and it was Max trying to, dive bomb Lando or try to like come around the outside, would we be having the same conversation? Would the penalty be the same? I'm not convinced it would be.
Well, let me throw it back to you this way then, Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when Lando went off track, gained the advantage, and immediately gave that position back?
Yep.
Do you think if Max did, like, let's say they didn't collide and Max gained that position from going off track and coming back on, do you think Max would have given that up without, like, instinctively?
No, and he didn't, because there was it was maybe the lap before where, Lando went inside again and Max went off the track and he kind of went around, right? He gained a significant advantage over, instead of just like kind of stopping and then turning the car and continue to drive. But I don't know how that draws a parallel to this particular incident either.
I'm just saying more like Max's attitude towards being a racing competitor and understanding that, like, you have to play fair, whether it's good or bad, you have to play fair. Because I think the way Max is looking at this is that, like, he doesn't care about the repercussions. Like, he's one of those guys that when he plays Monopoly and all of a sudden you got a couple of hotels on Boardwalk and Park Place, he flips the board. Because if he's not winning, nobody's winning. I think it's more of that, like, it's the attitude towards what he stands for. It's not actually like this particular incident. This was just like, the exemplification of his attitude towards racing and not winning in general.
Okay, fair enough. But what is the alternative to that, right? For someone, and again, this pains me somewhere inside because I'm kind of defending him. But like,
you're 100% defending Max right now.
I am defending Max. I feel like I don't know who I am right now. But isn't that what we look for in these racers, right? Like this kind of like killer instinct, like eye on the prize, really pushing the limits. Like we say we want this in a racer, and in like these dominant, legendary racers, whether it's Max or Lewis, especially in his early days, or Alonso, Kimi, Schumacher, whoever it might be, right? And then it happens and shit happens, and now all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, you gotta play by the rules. Think about everybody else.
But that brings up another great point, though, and you said it right there, that Lewis in his early days, we were just giving Max all the praise earlier this season about how he's matured as a driver and like, look at him go, handshaking high fives. He lost the Miami race, giving Lando high fives. You did a great job. And then boom, immediately we get old Max back. Like, he threw all of his maturity out the window again and was like, to me, this was an on-track temper tantrum to him not being able to win. He was like, damn, this is being threatened right now. Because he could have avoided it. I watched it happen. He didn't have to.
So could have Lando, though.
I think Lando was coming in way too hot. And I'm not giving him the free pass, but I'm just saying that, like, Max could have avoided it, and Lando was not in a position to be avoiding anything.
Well, so, like, I don't know whose point you're arguing right now, because, there is definitely a shared fault. And as a result of that, again, the penalty, I just don't know if it was anyone else, if that penalty would have been there, and whether it feels proportionate to the actions on track. I don't know, Thomas, what do you think?
You know what? It's the reason this incident also, I think, happened is because it wasn't the beginning of the race. It was coming to an end. Pressure was on, time was on, and both of them were starting to get clumsy. Shared fault, 100%, but I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this as well, because Max was first. He has that winner's mentality. He's not going to give it up easily. Lando's, tasted first place. He wants to taste that again. So he's going to give it all he's got. And I think they just both got a little bit too sloppy and both ended up making some silly mistakes. I think it was honestly a racing incident that could have been avoided, but shared fault. There's no one person that's 100% wrong or 100% right, no matter how the steward said it.
Okay, so do you think the penalty was deserved then or not?
The penalty was deserved, yes, because this is going to sound probably a little bit biased, but because Max has that winner's mentality in a sense, and he just doesn't want to let it go. He goes till tooth and nail, and sometimes he doesn't back out. He goes full on. So yeah, he deserves that penalty. Sometimes he needs to just back off and know when to back off
and let someone else win, is what you're saying. Follow-up question.
No, yes.
if Lando's car wasn't DNF'd, if he could make it and continue racing, do you think that same penalty would be handed out?
I think that wouldn't have made a difference. I think that penalty would have still been given to Max, just because of the incident. At the end of the day, Max was found at fault for that, and if it haven't been given out to Max, that would have been a huge uproar and a huge shitstorm. So yeah, that penalty, it had to happen.
We'll move on from a couple of losers to the winner of the race, George Russell, just back there picking up crumbs, finding his way to the top. I mean, right place, right time. He had to put himself in that position. He was close the entire time. He would have podiumed regardless. But does this really mean anything for Mercedes? Is this kind of like the happy accident they needed to get a little morale back in the team and maybe kickstart something, or continue the momentum towards something that they've clearly been building at the last few races?
Yeah, I think this is just kind of that crescendo that they've been working towards, right? Like they've just kind of peaked out. They needed a cheeky win in order for them to get a little win back in their sails, because they've been struggling for all of last year and most of this year, and they've just started to see some success with their upgrades. And I'm going to go back to that law of diminishing returns, and I think that Red Bull's just done everything that they can do at this point to make that car as fast as they can. We obviously see McLaren catching up, Ferrari's caught up, and I think Mercedes is just finally catching their stride. But I think that, well, let's talk quickly about the Toto Wolff comment that he's like openly apologized for, with the jumping on the radio. He got so excited, like a kid at Christmas, like walking into the mall and seeing Santa for the first time, and he just lights up. He's like, "Oh, you can win this, George. You can win." And he apologized so much. And like, I don't know if the apology was necessary, because like, I guess he didn't want to put any more additional pressure on George. George obviously knows he's there to win a race. Like, what else are you doing? Like, that's the only goal that you have. And I think, to George's credit, like, he had driven a fantastic race. He put himself in that opportunity that when, luck presented itself, that he was there to capitalize on it. Was it opportunistic? 100%. But I think we forget too that like this used to happen a lot more. Like, I've been going back through some of the archives on F1 TV and watching some of these older races, and like reliability issues were a big thing. People used to like, getting to the pits and tires were doing this and, exploding. And like, there was a lot of issues that these cars had. And a lot of the front running teams, the cars just like died on the 65th lap for whatever reason. And so there was a lot of these scenarios that like, the 5th, 6th, 7th place guys had a chance at winning because you never knew what was going to happen up front. We've been spoiled with super reliable cars over the last 5 years. And, this is just one of those kind of scenarios that like this could very well happen. And I think, as we spoke on enough in the beginning of this episode, is that like, if these kind of incidents are going to happen more and more as Max doesn't want to give up these W's, then I think that there's going to be a lot more of these scenarios that come up for the likes of George and Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, anyone else who's kind of gunning for that third position. And I would argue that if, this lap or this race was another 5 laps longer, that Oscar had a really good shot at the win, and he had a fantastic race. So yeah, hats off to the guys who made it on the podium as a result for frickin' Frack getting a little feisty in the front 2 seats.
So I think George and Mercedes got lucky. I think they really right place, right time. I'm not saying that their upgrades didn't help, but I think it was purely luck that he was, in third at that time. If that incident wouldn't have happened, he would have finished third. So I'm just gonna put it out there as it is. Right timing, and good luck. That's it.
So I was watching the last few laps of the race, saw George make his way in front. I was just we talked about this a few weeks ago again in Canada, and Toto's message coming on. I don't know if it reaffirmed it for me, but it's that we talk about like that killer instinct or knowing how to win or, performing under pressure. And I don't know, that was a jerk reaction from Toto being like, don't mess this up. Like, you can do this. This is really important.
Yeah.
And given George's recent history, I was hoping it wasn't going to happen to him because I think he's been performing well this year and he deserves some wins. But I was waiting for him to put like a tire in the gravel and just like spin and just like destroy the car. It was just like in the back of my head. I would not have been shocked. But you know what? He put it together. He held it together for the other, whatever it was, 8 laps. He had the tires left, and I'm glad he won. I think he does need to stop doing that little pose on top of his car, especially when it's this kind of win. But that's just like a personal feeling I have about it.
I'm kind of loving it.
Are you?
Yeah. I like that he's committed to it. Like, it kind of started out as a joke, and then he did it, and then now it's just his thing. Like, when he doesn't do it, people are going to be freaking out about it. So, like, I don't know. It just kind of turned into a thing,
I think it was more the fact that it's just kind of like a gimme. Like, this one was a bit of a gimme. Like, do you still...
Yeah.
Like, pole position, I get it. Like, a hard-fought win, I get it. If you kind of, happenstance your way into a win... I don't know, but it was very short-lived. It was quick.
Yeah, he was quick with it. Yeah,
he did not hold it out, which which I'm also really happy about. Anyways, good for George, good for Mercedes. Glad they got a win under their belt. We'll see what happens. Home race for everybody next week.
Yeah, Jesus.
Mercedes, George, Lewis, McLaren, Aston Martin. It's amazing how many. I mean, Red Bull to an extent, since their actual factory. Albon, half of Albon. Okay, we'll look forward to Silverstone in a second because that's always a big race. Winners and losers on the weekend, really quickly, Drew. One winner, one loser. Who do you got?
Quick winner, I'm going to say George Russell. Obviously, that's, he was in the right place at the right time, like we mentioned, but I think he has been doing so well all year. I think he's up 8-2 on Lewis in terms of out qualifying him. Like, I think he's just been a fantastic driver. And, we've mentioned this on previous seasons before in the podcast, is that, Mercedes is just good at being consistent. And this is one of those situations where your consistency rewards you with a win because you were there to pick up the pieces when things fell apart at the front. And, that is how Mercedes made it past Ferrari last year in the Constructors' Championship, was just being consistent. So hats off to him. Quick loser for the scenario was definitely Checo Perez. When you have the guy in front crash, come back to the pits with 3 tires, get a fix, come back out and still beat you. Not just beat you, but beat you by 15, 17 seconds, whatever it is embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. I am super curious to see how Helmut Marko reacts to this, because I know that racist old bugger is like a millimeter away from firing this guy, regardless of his sponsorship money.
So I'm gonna say the winner was I'm gonna say Pierre Gasly. He performed pretty well. Finished in the points. Solid race, honestly, very solid late race. The loser would probably be obvious choice would be Logan Sargent, but I think Fernando Alonso. Whatever they're doing at Aston Martin, they're not doing it right. And whether it's the upgrades, whether again, same as last year, they kind of almost went a step back. They're just not performing, and something has to change. But in regards to an Alpine, wow, if Pierre puts on constant drives like he did, it's going to be a challenge to the other teams as well.
I am gonna go. My winner this weekend is going to be Daniel Ricciardo. He had a solid weekend, outperformed Yuki, which has not happened a lot this year. So I'm happy to see him put together, a decent race. He got some points. My loser, I gotta go with Checo again. You talked about the race. That was a great way of putting it. the fact that on a lap that takes you about like a minute and whatever 5 seconds to complete, he's lapping a second slower per lap is just unbelievable. There can't be that much. We can have the discussion until we want about whether cars are suited more for one driver or the other, or built from one driver to the other, but a second is like a massive delta, especially on a track that short where it's usually milliseconds that are deciding places. So I have no idea what's going on. A couple of other winners and losers. Moving on to the teams, let's talk a little bit more about Haas, because they have had some solid performances the last few weeks. The qualifying has been solid. Thomas, I know you had some thoughts on this. Take it away.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that while watching the race, actually, and it really got me thinking, what exactly changed at Haas that they became actually competitive and not the last team anymore to finish? Obviously the leadership changed, but what ignited per se that spark for the drivers to perform? What was the secret formula? That's what I keep on, thinking in my thoughts. What exactly changed? Was it like motivational speech that got the drivers pumped up, or they were told something, push in and don't be afraid, that something Gunther Steiner didn't do? Maybe the drivers are afraid of Gunther Steiner. So I'm starting to like Haas as a team because they're actually performing relatively well compared to others. But at the same time, now I'm thinking about Kick Sauber. Is Kick Sauber becoming the old Haas? I mean, Kick Sauber, both of their drivers and Logan Sargent are pointless so far this season. And I know they're a whole new team and everything, but they just been constantly plagued with errors on their cars, with the wheel nuts, from wheel nuts to slow pace to just not performing. And Valtteri Bottas is a pretty decent driver, and even he can't perform. He was amazing at Mercedes, but all of a sudden now, pardon my language, he's kind of shit there. So what's going on there? So those are my two winners and losers from the teams.
For Logan Sargent, this has nothing to do with him. As this talk has absolutely nothing to do with him. It's about two completely separate teams, and somehow he gets roped in with the two Sauber drivers. I don't know, man.
Yeah, we're talking about Haas doing absolutely stellar despite their history, and how Kick Sauber has kind of dropped down, and then we still managed to somehow shit all over Logan Sargent.
The two Sauber drivers and Logan Sargent are doing absolutely.
You know what? Just my 2 cents on that, Thomas. Yeah, I know you brought that up, and I thought it's a great point, because you know what? Haas used to be the laughing stock of F1, and they were just kind of that like whatever team at the back of the grid. They're very much not that team anymore. And I don't know if it's a combination of, like you said, that leadership change, getting Gunther Steiner out of there. I don't know if there was like too much Hollywood, or they had the, camera crews from Netflix and Drive to Survive in there all the time, or if the attention was more towards leadership and not enough on the driving and the cars. I don't know what that looks like, but I think there's a different kind of feeling going around the paddock in terms of the Haas guys. Like, people aren't talking down about them or poorly about them. Like, they are showing signs of success, but you also get that with the likes of Nico Hulkenberg and K-Mag, right? Like, those guys are veterans of the sport. They know how to drive a car, and I think it might have just taken them a little bit of time to gel with the new leadership and gel with the new car, and to see these upgrades come out for these guys. I think they've been a lot better on their tires, because that was one of those cars that like has been historically like a one-lap wonder. And, that's how Nico's been able to put it on to some crazy qualities, despite that car not being able to drive over the race distance. And I think that, they've just been able to kind of slowly figure that out over the last, 5 years. And so it's kind of just coming to a head now. And I think that there's other teams that have brought upgrades that haven't been upgrades. They've been downgrades, and they've kind of been slowly falling back. And I think Aston Martin kind of falls into that category where, Alpine at the start of the year was really bad, and they've started to make real upgrades. But everything that Aston Martin and Kick Sauber have been coming out with have been downgrading them. And then Haas is actually making some movement forward. So I think there's a combination of a few things that are happening in order for Haas to get some of this success. But yeah, I'm here for it, man. I think these guys race really hard, and obviously, K-Megs had to keep his elbows a little bit tighter in there because of his driver points. But yeah, it's been good for them, and I'm excited for them.
So here's my question to both of you, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I'm wondering if it's that Haas has, whether they've necessarily improved performance, or has everyone else just gotten really, really terrible? Because I feel like there's a greater. It would be interesting to compare performances, year over year, and see where the performance is relative to last year. And is it just that you don't have like the Alpines, the Aston Martins, the Saubers, or what was last year? What was it? Alfa Romeo and Williams. Are like, is there just more teams doing worse? Or is it that Haas has made noticeable improvement gains comparatively to last year?
I don't know the answer, but I'm sure there is an answer. I'm sure you can look at some of those numbers and be like, well, what was their last year at the Red Bull Ring?
Great answer. I'm sure there's an answer too.
Yeah. I'm coming out with all the academic answers here. But yeah, I'm sure if you just looked at what Haas has been doing at the Red Bull Ring for the last 5 years and then take a look at everybody else's, I'm sure you can see if they've gone faster or slower.
Well, I'm sure we could too. I'm just just kind of where I went to.
There's your homework, Walker. There's your homework.
There is my homework. I'm gonna look that up quickly. What do you think? Do you think, Thomas, that they've actually made a marked improvement, or is it just that everyone else is getting worse?
I think they did improve a little bit. The improvement that I personally saw was when the leadership change took over. Maybe not right away, but slowly after new leadership came in, I started to see an improving. The drivers started just driving better, performing better. Not saying that they're perfect. They're still having their own incidents. And, as Drew said, some of the drivers are a little bit with their elbows out and kind of rough. But yeah, I think they definitely gained an improvement as a team.
All right. Well, this, I guess, is a good opportunity to reach into that mail box. And we have our good buddy from the Discord. Let's take a quick second to plug the Discord channel. If you guys haven't, the link is in the show notes. Check it out. We have a really cool Discord channel. We got all the guys in there talking about F1. We got a spoiler chat there so you can talk to everybody during the races. It's a lot of fun. And we have a mailbox where you can put in some questions and we will do our absolute best to answer them and or just chat about it, whatever's relevant to you guys and what you want to hear. So our boy Mike Zanin has reached out and he said last year Perez was on the cusp of being let go unless his performance improved. This year's he's doing much worse, but they signed him on for 2 years, 1+1. But yeah, we get you. Is Red Bull actually creating this disparity? And if so, why? Well, Mr. Zanin, we appreciate your question. And I don't know if Red Bull is doing this on purpose, but I think my immediate answer is Checo comes with those Mexican pesos and a boatload of them. And I think that if Checo did not have all those Telmex sponsorship dollars, Checo would have been long gone. Like I alluded to earlier, I think that old racist bugger, Helmut Marko, would have had this guy. Gandhi's, sayonara. He's out of here. Checo out. But I think that because of his ability to bring in some money and attention from an entire country, a very populated country, that I think Checo is going to be around. And you know what, Mikey Z, I think you're 100% right. I think that his performance has dropped this year. And I think he, as a consistent basis, was doing much better than last year. But Checo's a hurting unit right now. And he got worse after he got his new 1+1 contract.
I think everything you said is absolutely true. I think the other part of this is that he's Max approved. He has Max Verstappen's stamp of approval as being a very clear, unthreatening driver who kind of knows his place in the team now. I think maybe a couple of years ago, he was maybe pushing a little bit. He was thinking that he could be racy and win and compete for the number one seat. But I think I don't know if his recent performance has just been like complete and utter despair, knowing that he's never gonna be number one, or if he's just deflated or what it is. But I think he understands his place and his role in the team. And I think in that kind of team, in that atmosphere, when you have Max and you have Max's dad and you have, you know, all the politics that come with those two and keeping them happy, I think that having a number two seat that Max approves of is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And that's his role right now. He is,
I think you're
Max
spot on.
approved.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, dude.
I think that's where we're at with it. Thomas, you got another thoughts on this?
I think that honestly, it's surprising that they chose to sign on Checo for another 1+1. As Drew said, yes, he adds a lot of moolah to the sport and the whole country essentially. But he's just not performing, which I thought was quite a surprising move. Red Bull could do so much better than him. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what their game plan is, but I do not believe that he was the right person to sign. I think they should have went with someone else and just took the chance.
Fair enough. Well, he's going to get another shot at it in about a week because we're heading into the third race of this triple header. It's been nice having races every week. I know I say that. I've been saying the last couple of weeks, but it's just straight facts. And we're rounding it out with Silverstone, which is, you know, a top track, historic Grand Prix, always a ton of fun, lots going on. We just talked about how it's the home Grand Prix of so many teams and drivers. What are we looking forward to? You know, given how the last race ended, you know, it'll be interesting to see the on-track manners between Max and Lando and see how those two teams are, what their attitudes are towards each other. But Drew, what are you looking forward to at Silverstone next week?
I'm really pumped about the fight out front. Like, Max is going to be there. He's already punched his ticket because he's just a fantastic driver. He's really good at the F1. And I think that there's a chance for Lando to repeat this. And I am so excited to see how this is going to play out because, like, who learned their lesson? And I know it's not Max. No. So, like, is Lando? Yeah, it's not Max. Yeah, it's definitely not Max. But is Lando going to go and do the same thing again? Like, what did he learn? Did he learn that he has to, like, be more competitive in terms of, like, where he picks the passes? Because, like, Silverstone's not an easy track to pass on, right? Like, it definitely has some overtaking opportunities, but, like, that's not a fun track. And, like, you know, the Rebel Ring there was some very clear places to pass, and that's where historically all the passing's been done. And I just think that Mercedes has another opportunity to get on the podium because those guys are looking really racy. And I know that Max loves to fight it out. I know that Lewis really loves this track, and George is okay on this track. But I think that, you know, with his recent confidence and obviously last week's win, he's going to be right up there. So I'm actually curious to see what the Ferraris are going to do because they were a immediate loser for last week and they weren't anywhere the week before. And so I think that there's an opportunity for Ferrari to come back out with a winning mentality and put some points on the board, some well-needed points on the board.
Just before, Thomas, you give us our thoughts, I just want to clarify, did you just, at the beginning of your whole talk, say that Max is really good at the F1?
Yes.
Just want to clarify that.
Really
Thank you.
At the F1. Yeah.
At the F1. Okay, good. Thomas, what do you got for this weekend, Silverstone?
You know what? As Drew read my mind, I really, really hope to see the same fight between Max and Lando. That was really entertaining. I think Mercedes got a little bit of a good job, you know, being on the podium. I think they're gonna bring out their top A game and they're gonna fight for the points. Yeah, I that's what I'm looking forward to the most, actually. Like Lando and Max's fight and see how the racing between those two are gonna go.
Great track, gonna be fun. Lots to settle from last week. You know, I don't think Max will change a thing because he's Max and he doesn't, and I don't think Lando's going to change a thing either because now I think he feels like he's owed. now he's in it. Now he's in the thick of it. Now he's a little salty. So it's gonna be fun to see those two duke it out on track. And I'm gonna be there for all of it. Really quickly, this is actually really nice because before we used to preface our predictions with the fact that Max was either number one or the fact that he was, how many seconds in front he was going to be. But I don't think we need any of that right now. So predictions, top three on the podium, Silverstone. Drew, go.
I'm going to go Lewis Hamilton. I'm going to go Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen.
Thomas?
I am going to go Piastri, George, and Lando.
All right. I'm going to go Hamilton. Let's go George and Leclerc.
Okay, we like it.
There we go.
We like it.
I think that I'm going to put it out there. I think Lando and Max are going to take each other again.
I like it.
Why not?
You're right. Yeah,
let's throw it out there.
Yeah, let's do it up.
Well, the good thing is we only have a couple of days left until we get to find out. Looking forward to it when we will be back all next week. Hopefully all of us. Hopefully Eddie's back. Talking about the Silverstone Grand Prix, recapping everything, talking about any crashes, whether anyone deserves any penalties, who knows? But
Maybe
we'll be here
driver
for
signings. I'd like to hear
driver signings.
Carlos Sainz come out with something. Yeah, I'd like to have a little bit more solidification in terms of where these guys are going to be sitting next year.
Yeah, because you know what? I think we can talk about this next week, but I feel like he might be waiting a little bit too long. I think he's slowly burning a few bridges by kind of taking his time and seeing if the grass is greener. But another conversation for another day, because this has been Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, tell your friends, join the Discord. All the links below. We're on Instagram, all the places. And that's it. We'll talk to you next week, recapping Silverstone.
It's lights out and away we go.